As much fun as co-op gaming is, most of the great games throughout history are single-player. Zelda, Metroid, Metal Gear, Ico, Half-Life, these are all solo trips. However, even though you play through these games on your own, your buddies play through them too. I spent many nights escorting Ellie to Salt Lake City without any co-op assistance, well, except Tess. But I could share that experience with other players subsequently. After that game, everyone knows what you mean when you mention clickers, or that last surgeon, or the giraffes. Great single-player games connect gamers with a common language and shared history better than co-op games do. But then there are the single-player games we play through that not everybody is going to play. Games with a cult following or a passionate fan base are not for everybody. They may have some gameplay flaws or some graphical limitations that not everyone is willing to tolerate. These are the games in which you truly go solo. You fight the monsters, enjoy the settings, and witness the plot, knowing that virtually nobody you know is going to have that experience too. Here's 6 games that make that list.
6.
Cursed Mountain. I have always deeply appreciated Tibetan culture and religion. Cursed Mountain does a great job with these. In the game, you play as Eric, a climber seeking his brother who vanished high up in the Himalayas. The game does a great job gradually deepening the experience as you climb higher and higher up the mountain, passing through villages, caverns, temples, and base camps, which really convey the sense of an ever-increasing altitude. You fight ghostly apparitions with magical items, some using the Wii Nunchuck, which is fun and actually utilizes the remote well, but the real success of the game is its ability to create a sense of grim inevitability as Eric climbs higher and higher. You get the sense that he is not planning on coming back down the mountain. With the Tibetan Buddhist spiritualism referenced throughout the game, the impressive graphics for the Wii, and the great use of the Wii Remote, it should be a game everybody tries. Why it's not for everybody. Eric, for all his climbing, is a bit tank-like when he moves around on level ground. The game itself is very slow, more atmospheric than actually menacing. For a horror game, I don't remember any jump scares. You usually see your enemies coming from a ways away. But good luck if they surround you, because Eric the tank is quickly overwhelmed.
5.
Ni no Kuni. For someone who does not usually enjoy RPGs, Ni no Kuni is surprisingly fun. Created with Studio Ghibli, the game is beautifully animated and graphically impressive. There are even some fun, if clunky, references to Studio Ghibli characters, like when you fight the enormous battle tank Porco Grosso. The music, by the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra, will stay with you long after you play. You play as Oliver, who has entered a magical world trying to find a way to return his recently deceased mother to life. Doing so requires becoming an increasingly powerful wizard through traveling the world, fighting monsters, and restoring heart to the people who have had their spirits diminished by the evil in the world. Why it's not for everybody. RPG folks seem to prefer their heroes slightly older these days, and the unrelenting cuteness of the game may be a little bit more saccharine than most are willing to tolerate. See also De Blob and De Blob 2. The dungeons are a little unimaginative, though pretty, and I found that grinding is also necessary when playing through, though this can be mitigated with the help of a walkthrough. The dialogue can also be a bit dopey at times. In truth, for all the cuteness of villain scheming, what propels you in the game is wanting to see what beautiful location you'll be heading to next.
4.
Dark Souls. Dark Souls is also a beautiful game. You play as a mysterious protagonist who is freed from an undead asylum and given a vague quest to ring 2 bells and save the world, or destroy it. The minimal plot allows for a great deal of interpretation by the player, but the graphics are inarguably stunning. The vistas from the castle walls or in the deepest dungeons are beautifully done. Combat is fun, and there is a wide variety of enemies to face. The levels are meticulously interconnected, and it is an incredible feeling to open a door or discover an elevator that connects you back to the beginning of the game or to a convenient save point. However, the real strength of the game is its ability to instill a sense of accomplishment when you win an impossible battle or discover a long-sought-for save point. Why it's not for everyone. As anyone who's played it knows, this game is hard. Creatures will emerge from nowhere and kill you instantly. You will stumble across impossibly powerful monsters who will demolish you with little concern for the precious souls you collected and will now lose. Random creatures will poison you or curse you, which can be a surprisingly difficult condition to repair. Dark Souls is notoriously fair, but relentlessly brutal. Enjoying the game requires the ability to consider death to be a part of the game. You are supposed to die. Learn from that experience and try again. When I play the game and have one of these deaths, I think of Louis Gossett Jr.'s drill sergeant and an officer and a gentleman yelling at me to man up and get back at it. Unfortunately, without the obligation of an enlistment in the Navy, it is all too easy to find a less punishing way to spend my time. Deadly creatures. This one has an unusual premise out there for video games, the idea of taking control of a scorpion and a tarantula as they have their lives interrupted by a pair of loathsome treasure hunters, voiced by Billy Bob Thornton and Dennis Hopper. Levels rotate between the two characters, each of whom have their own abilities, which they power up throughout the game, and their own experiences. You battle desert insects and critters, including a particularly persistent rattlesnake, and occasionally the two battle each other. Ultimately, both the heroes and the villains leave the desert and wind up inside a gas station for a truly memorable final sequence. I cannot think of many titles that switch back and forth between the protagonists this well, not since Raziel and Cain in Legacy of Kain: Defiance, or that commit so wholeheartedly to the concept of the protagonist staying creatures and not taking on any human traits. Why it's not for everyone. This is the type of innovative game most gamers want to encourage, but by virtue of the fact that the experience is unusual, most gamers may not take to it. To be clear, the scorpion and the tarantula are not anthropomorphized. They do not have any personality to speak of or any goals beyond survival. Add to this the bugginess and glitchiness of the game, and there are plenty of reasons most folks are going to skip this one. This is a real shame because there are literally no other games out there in which you get to play a scorpion who stings Billy Bob Thornton in the genitals. Sword and Sorcery. Sword and Sorcery is a beautiful game for the iPad or PC with simple graphics and basic gameplay. You play as a warrior who is attempting to return peace to the residents of a wooded countryside. All three of them, apparently. Questing involves some basic problem solving and occasional combat, but the overall experience is really more about atmosphere than adventuring. The sound effects and music for me were the true high points, particularly when battling the Golden Trigon. Seriously, check it out. The story again is fairly minimal, but the game occasionally breaks the fourth wall and speaks to the player directly, informing you to take a break after defeating a level, for example. These breaks heighten the sense of intimacy, leading the gamer to feel a more personal connection than most games provide. The game is not a terribly long experience, but it is a memorable one that is both personal and nostalgic. Why it's not for everyone. The game is fairly sleepy and slow-paced in its approach to adventuring. Puzzles are also a little confusing and vague sometimes. The graphics are fun for old-school gamers, but unlikely to interest everyone. More than anything, though, most of us will probably need to wait until Sword and Sorcery premieres on the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live before we can talk our friends into playing. As fun as any game is, tapping repeatedly on an iPad screen, often while screaming, "Go here!" is not everybody's idea of fun. Deadly Premonition. Deadly Premonition is a weird game. You play as Agent York, who has been called in to assist the investigation of a graphic murder, and for those of us of a certain age, this immediately creates a strong Twin Peaks vibe. York himself is a bit of a contradiction. On the one hand, he is highly competent, brave, and devoted to his job, much like Agent Cooper. On the other hand, he appears to have an imaginary friend named Zack, with whom he converses frequently, sometimes about the case, and sometimes about random horror movies. The murders continue as the plot progresses, and solving the murders involves getting to know the town's citizens and fighting ghostly apparitions relatively frequently. Ghosts apparently are not bulletproof. Oddly, the game also requires you to keep York fed, rested, and groomed. The ability to replay days of the game allows you to stock up on items, and the fact that the plot does not progress until you go to a particular location means that even when all the characters insist that you need to go directly somewhere, you are often free to travel around, meet citizens, take on side work, collect weapons, and solve minor problems for the citizenry. And if you miss these chances, you can replay them easily. The final act of this game is truly insane, as the supernatural forces seem to take over the town, and the final battle is one of the strangest I've ever encountered anywhere. Why it's not for everyone. The graphics are the most obvious reason this is not the game for everybody. The game looks like one of the myriad PlayStation 2 survival horror games from the early 2000s, and controlling York is as clunky and blocky as controlling Leon in Resident Evil 2. A good walkthrough can improve the gaming experience a lot. For example, acquiring the radio early on ensures that you never experience running out of gas in the middle of the woods, if you're willing to seek one out. The strange dialogue, the odd plot, and the unique sense of humor ensure that not everyone is going to find this game worth the effort. Not unlike Twin Peaks.